Welcome to Needham High School. Thank you for coming out tonight and being here. We're happy to be here with all of you in person. My name is Allison Kubro-Argentieri, and I'm one of the assistant principals at Needham High. We also have two other assistant principals, Mary Kay Alessi and Pierre Jean. And our principal, Aaron Seacott, who's unable to be here tonight because he is at a training. You are going to hear from him in a few minutes by video, as he wants to make sure to share a message with you about welcoming you to Needham High School, what some of our values are, and what you have to look forward to this spring, this summer, and definitely next year as well as your students arrive. Raise your hand if you already have students at Needham High or that have gone through Needham High School. All right, welcome back. And if you haven't, you're in for a treat, I hope, and I hope it's going to be a great experience for you and your students and your families. So we're excited to have you here. I also have Meredith Welch, I'm waving here with me tonight, who is one of our school counselors who's going to help to talk to you about the course selection process, what it looks like to be a student at Needham High School, all the supports that we have to offer your students, and what the four-year path looks like for students, and most importantly, what a ninth grade year and that transition to high school looks like. And we also have Dana Plunkett, who's in the back clicking right now, but will be joining us as well, who's our Director of Counseling, 6 to 12, and is here to support you in this process as you transition from either Pollard or private schools in the area into Needham High School. We also have two of our ninth grade interdisciplinary program teachers here, Joe Krajewski and Dave Buxton, who are going to talk to you a little bit about that interdisciplinary opportunity for your students. So we have a packed agenda tonight. Our goal is to talk and present and share some information with you, probably for around an hour, maybe a little bit less, and then have an opportunity for you all to ask some questions or to talk amongst yourselves about what next year will hold for your students. That works, yeah, we can do agenda. Okay, so I want to share a core values statement, and Aaron Seacott in the video is going to expand on this a bit. But at Needham High School, we're a caring community striving for personal growth and academic excellence. This is something that the high school developed through a comprehensive process a few years ago, and something that we believe strongly in. We're here to help support your students develop both academically, but also socially and emotionally and as people, and we know that you share those values too. So this is something that's important to us, and Aaron's going to expand a little bit on it in his video here.
Welcome to Needham High School. I'm Aaron Seacott, and I'm very honored to be the principal of this great community. I'm sorry that I'm not there with you in person tonight. Please trust me that I definitely would be if not for this conflict with the conference. I am excited to get the chance to connect with you in future meetings and throughout your child's time at NHS. Now, whether you're sitting at Needham High School for the very first time or you've shepherded other children through already, please know how welcomed you are here. At Needham High School, our core value statement highlights that we are a caring community striving for personal growth and academic excellence. Now, that caring community extends to you as well. And I'm confident that your children will feel it right from the start as they begin their transition to NHS and then start their journey here officially in late August. Now, between our upper class students who serve as ambassadors, to their counselors, to their teachers, to all of us in administrative, nursing, and support roles, your child will find a team of people around them who will guide them through their time at high school. Now, a minute ago, I mentioned the academic excellence that we're all striving for. And I know that for many of you, the quality of the schools in Needham was a factor in your decision to live here. We will not disappoint you in that area. Your children are going to experience one of the best high schools in the highest performing state in the country. In other words, their education is among the best in the world. Now, we take great pride in that, and you will surely see why as your child begins their coursework. With that strong academic foundation, we also pair a focus on personal growth. We want every one of your students to feel welcomed, safe, and a deep sense of belonging here, and to have each one make this their own community. In these years, they will begin to find themselves, grow, stumble, and figure out how they fit into this complex world of others with varied backgrounds, beliefs, religions, and races. And we see this work and support as being just as important as ensuring their academic success. Now, as we strive for this balance, let me encourage you to help support their balance as well. Help them to find the right mix in their choices about classes and levels. They should be stretched in some areas, but not all of them. They should be able to engage in the range of activities outside of classes that make life so rich. whether it's clubs, sports, jobs, religious groups, or spending time with family and friends. There is no perfect schedule overall, but each student can find their own, with the help and guidance of those of you who know them best. And each student will grow during high school, so leaving space for that growth from one year to the next is also wise. Tonight you're going to hear about the course selection process that they'll be engaged in the coming weeks. Those choices will be informed by the expertise of their current teachers and by your own insights. If you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask their cluster teachers. And I will continue to encourage you to reach out at any point during the high school career that you have questions, suggestions, or concerns. We are truly here in partnership with you for these 4 years. And it will be a great 4 years for your children. I'm confident in that. I look forward to meeting your kids and you in the near future. And for now, I hope you enjoy the night and are excited for the beginning of this next stage for your children. Take care and have a wonderful night, everyone.
All right. Everybody who just came in, we can pause for a minute. There's some seats, probably 10 to 15 up in this corner, same in that corner, and the front row, the best seat in the house is also open. So everybody knows we'll also be sharing all of the slides that we present tonight, all of the links, and some additional information with you, including a recording of tonight with you after, probably in the next day or two. So don't feel like you need to take notes or anything. Certainly welcome to take photos of any slide if you would like, but we will share all the information with you as well, as most of it is also posted or will be posted on both the Needham High and the Pollard websites. All right, I'd like to introduce Meredith Welch, who's going to talk to you about Needham High School, what the transition looks like, what a typical 9th grade year looks like for students, and what you can expect over 4 years at Needham High. It's a lot, so bear with us, but we'll be here to support you through it.
Great. As Allie said, I'm one of the school counselors in the counseling department. And before I launch into the slides, I just want to give you a little snippet about counseling at the high school. Every student has a school counselor, and we work with our students over the 4 years. The focus in grade 9 is really about the transition to high school and making sure that our students are finding their footing academically, socially, emotionally, you name it. And the key is we want to make sure that they know the supports that are available to them, how to access them, and we want them getting involved in our school community. There's something here for everybody, from clubs to sports, to art, drama, community service, you name it. And we want to help them with that. And as the students get older, of course, we keep an eye on their credits and their graduation requirements, and we get to know them a bit more, and we set goals with them. In a nutshell, we're a supportive adult in the building for your child to really help them make the most of their high school experience and do the best they can. So that's a little bit about that. Now I'm going to overwhelm you with our schedule. So yes, it does look a little wacky, it is, and please know that your child will have this down in no time flat. Okay, so I just want to point out a few features with hopefully not confusing you more than I need to. So we have a 7-day rotation, and there are 7 blocks to fill. Okay, so that means that the class, a student's English class is it's going to vary in length and when it occurs on a school day. And so on the far left, you see we have numbers. So on a day 1, say your child's English 9 class is A, that is the schedule. It's 5 blocks. That's intentional, so we're not jamming 7 blocks into a day. It slows down the pace. It allows for students and teachers to cover more material in a calmer and more deeply in class. So that is the rotation. I know it looks confusing. That's why I'm a big proponent of having a planner, having our students have the planners, either the printout or the digital one. Another element of our schedule, which I think is a great asset, is the X block. So that is homeroom. Your child will be assigned to a homeroom. Many of you have probably been in a homeroom back in the day. It's alphabetical. And for 3 of the 4 days, that can also be a resource block or an extra help block, where students can sign up with their teacher to review a complicated math problem, to prep for a history test, to work on an essay, so they sign up for that. So it's a 30-minute block each morning except for Friday. Friday we have a later start because faculty has collaborative learning time, so the kids love it. They come in at 8:30 or a little before then. But that's pretty much, and then we have a different lunch rotation. It's a lot of rotations, but I swear they will get a hang of it, and it works. It really works. And I think Xbox is a wonderful thing. Oh, on Wednesdays, the students they can't leave homeroom, and it's really about community building and doing some advisory work with their homeroom teacher. And of course, if your child doesn't need help on any given day, they don't have to go see a teacher. They can just stay put in homeroom, do homework, hang out with a friend. It's 30 minutes each morning. Okay. So here we go. So this is a lot of detail. I just wanted for you to see where we're going with each year and to look at graduation requirements. Please know you don't have to have these memorized. I also want to help you keep in mind that this is a minimum. So 92 is the minimum that students get to graduate. Most of our students graduate with an excess of credits, and that's just following a regular schedule and showing up and attending school. Okay, so I just want to review these. It's 4 years of English, 4 semesters of wellness. Wellness is our PE and health course, and a student will take a semester of it each year. 3 years of math, 3 years of science, 3 years of social studies. That also includes U.S. history. 2 years of world language, 2 years of fine and performing arts, so that's 8 credits, that's a lot. So we encourage our students to jumpstart that as they start high school. Also the MCAS, students must pass the MCAS, and the bio MCAS is what 9th graders will take in June of their 9th grade year, and then they will take ELA in math sophomore year. And 60 hours of community service. It sounds like a lot, but they have the 4 years to do it. In fact, some students go above and beyond depending on their interests and how they spend their time. And that's another resource, that's another way counselors can also help your child figure out options, whatever their interest may be in terms of social justice or social action, and finding a way to do the service. So that is an overall. As you see in 9th grade, 9th and 10th grade are pretty prescribed, so to breathe, that's all right. That means there are fewer decisions to be made at this moment. And as students progress through high school, that empty space doesn't mean no classes, it just means older students have more choice in what they take in terms of academic electives, and Needham High offers an amazing litany of coursework for your child. So here's the 9th grade. This is what a 9th grade schedule looks like. This slide, okay? So every student will take English 9, or if your child is planning on the 9 IP program, which you're going to hear about in a little while, it would just have 9, it would be English 9 IP. It would have a different designation. Math 9 is what students take. Our science is biology. Social studies is world history. World language, we have Spanish, Latin, French, and Mandarin. Okay, so they'll take that, as well as wellness is in the spring. And then there's a year, they have a year, they can either take a full year elective, and that could be anything from chorus, band, or Art 1, or it could be split into semesters, and it could be things like Intro to Computer Science, Digital Art, Architectural Design. There's a whole list of choices, okay? Every student will have a directed study in the first semester, and that is intentional. It's to ease the transition to high school. And remember, with the rotating schedule, it doesn't mean the study will occur every day. It will happen every other day, and it will allow a student, ideally, to either take a break or perhaps get a jump start on their homework to alleviate some afternoon time so they can join a club, get involved, and really make the most of all the extracurriculars we have here. And then, of course, 9 if your child is in special education, they would have a skills block, and some students are in a personalized learning center. So here about the levels. So we know that our students come to us with different levels of need and readiness, and that's where the levels come in. And that's how they serve our students well by, they vary in terms of pacing, content, and support. okay? So a student that might need more support is really developing their academic skills. College prep would be a good option, okay? It's more heavily scaffolded by the teacher. The majority of the work happens in the classroom, so there's less homework. It depends, and every child, we'll get onto that. And then honors is a little bit more fast-paced. It's still developing the skills. There'll be a bit more homework. And then accelerated level, it's for students who have strong foundational academic skills. They are able to work independently. They're readily able to analyze and synthesize information, and they can keep up with the fast-paced class dynamic. And there's a lot more homework, okay? Now, as a counselor, I have seen that most often students have a mix of levels, and that's great. It meets them where they are in this time, especially in 9th grade developmentally, in terms of their skills. I find that 9th and 10th grade are instrumental in terms of the time to really work and hone those academic skills. And students may move up levels, or they may not, because every year things get a little bit more abstract, and it's all about balance. Okay, so I just want, especially in the transition to high school, thinking about balance is really important. In the coming weeks, teachers at Pollard, or if your child attends a private school, St. Joe's, Rashi, Schechter, Park, President, you name it, the teachers will share a course recommendation in terms of levels, okay? And they will do that based on their knowledge of our curriculum, and also, more importantly, their knowledge and experience with your child in terms of their skills, their growth, their progress, their goals. So please, they spend a lot of time doing this. I know private school teachers do as well, but I know our Pollard teachers do, and they're really thoughtful and they're really good at it. If you have any issues or questions, or you think something's missed, just reach out to the teacher, reach out maybe to the middle school counselor to have those conversations. It's key. We want our students engaged and challenged, but we want a thoughtful balance. And like I said, it can be a mix of levels. It's not a one-size-fits-all plan. And remember that high school, there'll be growth over time and some movement and goal setting as we help your student move through high school. There is an override process. Dana is going to talk about course registration a bit more later. And that, there's that. It's a caution. I want you to be thoughtful about that. The one thing about override also to think about, if, say your child is recommended for something, you feel like it's too much. It's not that you're worried that you feel like it's too much, and your child is a really committed actor or musician and plays in outside ensembles or athlete, you name it, and they spend a lot of out-of-school time with their talent and hobby in a different way. So that it's all right to underride as well. So just to let you know. Bottom line is, this is a lot of information. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you. It's a really exciting time. Your kids are going to continue to grow and flourish between now and June. And we'll be excited to see them in late August. And I'm going to be sticking around for questions later, and I think covering a few slides, but I'm going to turn it over to Ellie. So thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. So when you're starting to think about what you hope for your student in 9th grade or what the options are, we want to share some information with you about an amazing opportunity, which is the 9IP program, the 9th grade interdisciplinary program, where students would take 4 of their courses, biology, math, history, and English, in this IP program. So Dave and Jill are here to tell you a little bit more. These are 2 of the 4 teachers in the program. You'll also be getting more information about the program when we send out our slides and some videos after this. And there'll also be opportunities where teachers will consider your students and recommend them for the program, or say that they would be likely good fits or candidates for the program. And you'll also have the opportunity to request the program on your own in conversations with your students. So there'll be different ways that you can request at least access for the program.
Hello, I'm Dave Buxton. I'm the math teacher for the 9IP program, and I'm also here as a parent of a incoming 9th grader, so I have to listen carefully about all the information for myself too. I love this program. I am super passionate about it, as are the other teachers in the program and the the students we've had. This year is the 4th year we've run it. We've had 2 or 3 classes every year of the program. And I just think it's a really neat way to take in information. So it's a project-based approach. So basically, as an interdisciplinary program, the kids are working on 5 different units throughout the year. Our first unit is called Patterns and Observations, and the driving question is, how do we make sense of the world around us? And the kids move from math to English to history to biology, and in each of their classes are looking at that driving question. And you'll hear more from Jill in a second about some of the projects that we do. The project that students just finished up in math, they did a math and history project of using 3-dimensional software to build a castle and talk about historically what defenses they wanted to put in. And then we did a simulation modeling quadratic trebuchet projectiles firing at castles. So they brought in the quadratics that we do. The curriculum is the same that they would see in those 4 9th grade classes of history, English, math, and science. So in a lot of days, my math classroom looks like Math 9 honors classroom would look like. It's just that we're constantly connecting it to the other classes, but we're covering the same content. It's a cluster-like community, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. Some students are ready at 8th grade to sort of move into a bigger high school and move around to classes and not have many kids that they know in the different classes. But we found that a lot of kids really thrive in an environment where they become more comfortable. We have some kids that come in that are already really social learners and are excited to work in a social environment, and we have some kids that come in that that's not a strength of theirs, and they grow a lot throughout the year. So I feel like it fits a variety of students in terms of their readiness to work collaboratively. It's not a co-taught model, so when they're with me, they're with math. There are some things that we'll do together with classes. We have sort of the flexibility with our schedule of mixing the kids sometimes or pulling 2 classes together. But for the most part, they're traveling between classes just like they would another. We do have an interdisciplinary program for seniors called the Greater Boston Project, which is different, and that's a co-taught model that the history, social studies, and math teacher are in the room together as they move. It's not an alternative or pull-out program. It's just a different approach to education. I think you'll see a lot of the things that we do in our classes in the other classes. Like I teach other math classes, and we still focus on collaboration and projects and getting students to problem solve and think. The 9IP is just very intentional in terms of adding sort of that extra element. We meet every day as teachers together. We talk about how we can fit things together, where students are, how we can sort of build that, what connections we make. Participating in 9IP doesn't mean that you have to participate in 10IP, which is the 10th grade interdisciplinary program, and to participate in 10IP, you don't have to participate in 9IP. So it can be a 1-year thing, it can be a 2-year thing, but yeah, I think it's a great program.
I'm Jill. I'm a biology teacher for 9IP, and before we get started on like some of the projects, I think I'd echo Dave. This is like singularly the best thing I've encountered in 20 years of teaching here. I think that the help 9th graders need to grow happens because of what we do working in a team. And I think it's very different than a middle school team. They're still high school students, and we're treating them as such. But we are able to work together to provide them supports that I was never able to do previously, and I've always taught 9th grade biology. I kind of wish my kid went to Needham because she's a 9th grader, and I do think like the beginning of the year and being able to really have teachers keeping track of you and helping you figure out high school had been really nice. So we have a series of units that we developed in like 2019. We actually brought on COVID because one of our units is disease and equity, and we were thinking about having kids figure out how to respond to a pandemic, and then what happened?
4 years ago, we gave the first presentation right before we were about to run the program, like at this time, February, and it was awkward.
But one of my favorite units now is our observations and patterns unit, because I think it takes that beginning of the year where you're kind of learning the fundamentals of each subject, and the kids start to see that they actually connect between subjects. And so that observations and patterns, they learn how to think like a historian, they learn the scientific method, they learn to like observe graphs and be able to like understand the fundamentals of math and the fundamentals of writing. And I think it sets up the year really nice. We also spend a lot of time in that unit and throughout the year providing opportunities for the kids to reflect. And because we're working with a smaller group of kids, we kind of divide kids up and have a chance for us to respond to their reflections, which is something that I just couldn't manage when I was just teaching a large set of students without my colleagues. In the fall, we definitely take a trip to the Natick Community Farm, and we learn about sustainable farming, and the kids then design a sustainable farm that they would like to have in Needham, and we teach them through that website skills. So their pitch for their farm has to be a website. And then our disease and equity unit, which is the one we started out saying, how do you respond to a pandemic? What we noticed during COVID is that there were lots of issues around equity and response. So our kids choose a disease other than COVID. We teach them about what happened during COVID, and we talk about issues of equity, and they have to find those issues for their disease that they're assigned. So people have done HIV and malaria and other diseases and been able to connect all 4 subjects. And they actually make a documentary, so they learn like filmmaking skills within that project. So, I think we can go to the next slide.
So these are some testimonials, and instead of reading them to you, I'll just give you a second to read what some of the students have said. And then on the left side of that slide are some traits. I sort of talked about, there's a wide range of students in the program in terms of both academic levels and also academic maturity. But those are sort of the general things that you could talk to your student. If you find that they're intellectually curious and like learning collaboratively, like connecting their subjects, 9IP could be a really good fit for them. Like I said before, our other classes do that too, but there's just more intention with this. Like, we're really working together to try to build those 21st century skills within the class. So I wouldn't say that if you walked into another class, there aren't any students that are intellectually curious. There are probably intellectually curious students everywhere at Needham High School. But this program has sort of been built around that being a part of your learning and connecting the subjects, that interdisciplinary approach.
I think the other thing we perhaps should mention is that this coming year we are experimenting with allowing kids to take one accelerated level class. And so if they're signing up, I think they're going to be able to sign up for like one accelerated and a backup choice if that is their choice. Our goal of limiting that really is we do truly believe it's a heterogeneous environment, and we want kids at varying levels learning together. And I wanted to connect that to BioMCAS because I think that is the one MCAS they take at the end of 9th grade, and it what we have seen over the past couple of years is we have kids achieving at the highest level of MCAS and many kids in the middle level. And so I think important to understand that we believe that the heterogeneous nature of the students allows all students to achieve at a level higher than they probably would have done if they weren't working together. And that is like the reason I would want my own kid in the program. She's probably not one that you'd call intellectually curious, but she's very interested in like community. And I think when we see those kids able to like get connected with other kids and really shine, that's why we like doing this. And then I promised the student council kids outside I'd let you know that they're gonna stay till the end because they're very excited to like have people geared up for Needham High. So.
So there is some information up here for you. Tamitha Bibbo, who is the principal of Pollard, will be hosting 2 different opportunities where she puts out, I don't know the specific times right now, but I will get them for you and share them when we share these details out. But she'll be offering opportunities to talk, and some of that will be to allow for questions about this program. And Jimmy Odierna, who's a Needham High School teacher and also an interdisciplinary learning specialist and helps support the program, is a main contact. So if you have questions about your student and if they might be a good candidate for this, you can reach out to him. And you'll also be getting a link for the requests and to request the program. If we can take a couple of minutes if we have any questions directly about the 9IP program for Dave and Jill, and we'll just take about 3 to 5 minutes to do that now, and then they're going to go on their way.
Yes, the question was, if your child is in Skill Center, has an IEP, can they do it? And the answer is yes. All 4 years, we've had a good number of students. And I will also report that because there's some students in the program that have IEPs, they're all in the same Skill Center, which has been incredible because we work with just that one Skill Center teacher, and the collaboration between us is awesome. And when they're in their Skill Center, they're with 4 other students that all have the same classes. So they're working, they can help each other, whereas usually if they're in a PLC or a Skill Center, the students have different teachers. They might even be in the same level, but a little bit of a different place or a different worksheet. And here they're working on the same thing, so that piece has been awesome.
IP stands for interdisciplinary program. And then it's varied. We've always had at least 2 classes, so that's max 48. And usually 48 people are signed up, and then sometimes people move, and I think we have like 46 right now. 1 year, I forget what year that was, we had 3 classes worth. And our goal with adding Accelerated was to potentially have 3 classes next year, so that would be like 24 times 3. Math teacher.
And then that 1 year that we had 3 classes, there were more students that signed up, but because of the limiting size for 24 in a class, we had to limit it to that. But it turned out during the summer that I think 3 of the students changed their plans of not coming to Needham High School, so the 3 students that we initially had to say no to actually. So we haven't had to turn anyone down. And we've never lost a student midway through the year either. I can't say that every student left the program thinking that it was the best fit for them, but they stayed for the full year and really made progress in it.
So what's encouraging me as a parent to make my son join not IB instead of just regular school curriculum? This is a question so that ask them together or?
You can ask both.
Okay, second thing, if he's, for example, strong in math, is this affecting him because he's going to go more pace maybe with other students to go continue in the other ways that we go in 11 to 12? And third question, if he doesn't feel like continuing the regular years, if we make him try, can he go back to the regular school thing or he should continue after everything? Is that a lot of questions? He's my first.
Yes. I think choosing the program is awesome because it's an awesome program. I mean, I just like the concept behind it. I think it's great. I think you get a great education at Needham High School no matter what you take. I personally believe this is a really cool model to educate. It fits right in line with our portrait of a Needham graduate of like what we want our students to be when they leave. if it's right in line with like what you want your student to be, an independent learner down the road at college and at a job, and sort of those soft skills of communication, problem solving, presenting, like it's intentional in terms of how we're teaching it. In terms of the math, we've had students in each of the years, so the first 2 years, that have reached BC Calculus, which is the highest math course that Needham High takes after taking 9IP in 9th grade. That's a lot, so I'm sure for those students it was a push for them as they went, because there's going to be some adjustment. The Math 9 Accelerated class moves at a fast pace. I don't cover all the same material, although I can tell you now we're doing factoring in that class. And I've made additional assignments for the students who are ahead to do some self-learning. And so in the classroom, some of the students who finished the factoring that is required for the course are walking around helping other students, and some are working on sort of this advanced stuff that they wouldn't see in an advanced class, that they would see in an accelerated class. So I think that transition is easier because they have that opportunity. I also think they get an advantage in the class of being able to explain it to other students, right? I think you gain a stronger understanding if you're in an environment where you're teaching it to somebody else. And then the third.
And he did like the program that he started in that regular school program, or is it?
Good. So we haven't had anyone that has switched yet. I suppose they could. So the order of the course is a little different, although like for the most part we're pretty consistent with where our regular curriculum is. So yeah, if you got partly in you could.
Yeah, and we're pretty hard for history and biology because I think we do go in quite a different order. And you'd have to switch all 4 of your classes.
So you take the experience of it.
So I think like committing to the experience for a year. We definitely have kids who, every year, we didn't even have 10IP this year, so none of the kids continued on because some had wanted to, but the program didn't run. I don't think anyone has ever come back to us as an older student and said we couldn't manage because we took 9IP. In fact, we had older students present to our kids today, and they're doing a project in chemistry, and they said the idea of doing a project in a group, we're like well prepared to do that because of our experience. And these were kids who took 9IP and 10IP. So I think, if there was a struggle out of play in the year, I think really in helping them understand that you are gaining some skills that you'll use, and it's okay to drop the pathway, in a future year.
Yeah, thank you. And we will talk a little bit more toward the end of our program tonight about the override process and the course change process and what that looks like this year for you all when you're choosing what courses you want your students to take, but also what that might look like when school starts in the fall and our process for that, which is actually pretty structured and strict. So we do hope that you get a lot of information over the next couple of months and that you're doing the best with your students and their teachers and parent counselors to make decisions about what you think is best for them. We're not certainly do not want anyone to suffer in their current courses, next year when school starts. But with almost 1,700 students, we are very limited in course changes that we can make after we set our schedule, which really happens this spring and mid-June. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about what that process looks like. But thank you both very much. If you have more questions about 9IP, you can reach out to Jimmy Odierna, show up one of the TAM's principal's copies, or reach out directly to us as well at the high school. Thank you both for being here. We appreciate it. Meredith is back to talk a little bit about the math sequences, world language sequences, and fine and performing arts sequences.
Yes, I'm not going to spend too much time, but I just want a visual for you to see how the math curriculum in the years unfold in math. It's a 3-year graduation requirement. We do encourage our students to take 4 years of math. And the key is really for you all is to think about grade 9. That's really all you need to focus on right now, and making sure that your child is placed in the appropriate level, thinking about the content, the pace, all that they're balancing. It's really thinking about math 9 And then, of course, you can look down to 12 and see where it can lead them to all sorts of very demanding math courses and choices. I think I'm all set with math. Okay, so here we are with world languages. So one thing I know Elizabeth Zajac, who's the K-12 director of world language, always pushes is motivation. So if your child is more motivated to start a new language this year, go for it. And there are options to do that. Or if they want to build off whatever they're taking in 8th grade, as long as we offer it, Mandarin, Latin, French, or Spanish, and just really thinking about the pacing there. With PACE here, it's really about language acquisition, which can't be rushed. The pacing is less connected with how much homework there is in world language. Okay, so just, and if you have any questions, I know Dr. Zajac is incredibly helpful, and she's definitely much more of an expert in the linguist than me. And if you're coming from a private school, you know, it can be tricky in terms of like what one school calls Spanish 2 versus the other. I'd rather have you liaise with someone here at the high school, either a counselor or Elizabeth Zajac, who's the head of world language. Does that make sense? And also, if you have a child who's a heritage speaker and would like to pursue that language, and it's not something we offer here, you can also talk to Dr. Zajac too, if that's something that they would like to pursue in high school. And then fine and performing arts, like I shared earlier, there's so many different options. And please know, I know it's a requirement, don't worry, your child doesn't have to be an actor, a musician, or an artist. They're entry-level courses, and then they get very sophisticated. So in the slide deck that you will have available to you, you'll be able to really explore all the different choices. And there's a video that Leanne Sutton, who's the head of is she K-12? I don't know. She's the director of fine and performing arts for the district. She's on there outlining everything and where the different pathways can lead. Or if your child just might want to mix it up and take a semester of crafts and then a semester of drawing and painting, and that's fine. And then you may have a child who's a real studio artist and wants to get to AP studio art. It's amazing, the opportunities. There'll also be options there. She's going to be available on Zoom if you want to take a picture of this now, but it will be shared later to answer any questions about fine and performing arts. And I just do a little plug. It's a great program. It is 8 credits to graduate. It really does make sense to start tackling some of it in grade 9, okay? And Dana will go on about how kids can make choices and put things down. I think that is all. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Good evening, it's a pleasure to see you all. I'm Dana Plunkett, Director of Counseling, 7 through 12, so I've gotten to know some of your students at Pollard and work with the Pollard folks this year, and obviously at the high schools. So I'm sort of overseeing the trajectory between Pollard and private schools and the high school. Some of your students may be also considering an alternative path to Needham High School, and we encourage them to do so. So Minuteman High School is our vocational school that we liaison with for students who prefer to do the vocational track. Some of your students have already applied and will be having interviews this week or next week with Minuteman. And again, I actually had the opportunity to be up there in August when we did an administrative retreat. If you have not seen that facility, it is absolutely stunning and just cutting edge technology and programs up there. Certainly if your student is interested, I encourage you and your student to go take a look at the program up there. Really top-notch education that students are receiving. So again, that application process and the interviews are occurring now. If your student is all of a sudden changing their mind and might want to consider it in the next couple months, particularly if your student is at Pollard, I encourage you to have a conversation with Mark Yetman. He is one of the school counselors at Pollard, and he's our primary liaison between Minuteman and Pollard. So again, if your student was on the fence and hasn't signed up or applied yet and becomes interested, we can certainly work with you and your family and your student and Minuteman to make that happen if that wants to be a consideration. Minuteman has graciously provided us with a video of their programming, so again, if you're interested in that, you'll be able to follow the link on the slide deck and look into the offerings that they have up in Lexington. So I want to talk a little bit about the course selection timeline. for those of you who have students at Pollard and those of you who have private school students. So for those of you who have students at Pollard, this week actually Will Grannon, who is a school counselor at the high school, has been down talking to your students about the course selection process and sharing with your students the very same information that you're getting right now. So your students have all been or are getting informed of what we're talking about this evening. So again, this week and into next week, the school counselors, again, have been talking with your students, and more importantly, the teachers are talking with your students, your Pollard teachers, about what levels they recommend of the courses. And as we've said already this evening, your students' teachers are making those recommendations not only based on their experience of your student this year, but what they know of the curriculum next year. And whether it's Pollard or at the high school, we really take this process seriously. We want your student to be met with academic success based on how they performed. So they make these decisions very thoughtfully and thoroughly. And fortunately, with the cluster model at Pollard, the teachers can kind of work in concert to make those recommendations so that they really can look at that total recommendation package of the levels in each of the subject areas. If you have specific questions about the recommendation that your student is receiving, when you get a chance in Power School in March to see what those recommendations are, we encourage you to have those conversations with the teachers so that you better understand why they're recommending what they are for your student. Teachers, as they make those recommendations, are entering those recommendations into Power School, that system that records all of our grades and our schedules. Then in March, so between March 1st and March 8th, is when Power School opens up to students and families in order to be able to look at those recommendations from the teachers as well as to put in their elective requests. And I do want to emphasize that those are requests. Again, with almost 1,700 students, we can't guarantee that a student's going to get each of their requests, but I think we have about I'm going to brag for Allie, maybe like a 92% accuracy rate, and then we sort of do a little bit of magic to try to get that even higher. So we're pretty successful at it. But again, during that time window is the opportunity for students and families to kind of look at that total picture. And back to Meredith's words of wisdom, we really want students to look at the balance. So we want to look at all of those recommendations in addition to the other things that we want your students or your students anticipate engaging in high school. If they're going to be a 3-season athlete, if they're going to have a job, if they need to take care of family obligations, they want to get involved in activities, we want them to have a balance coming into their first year. And it isn't necessary to accomplish everything in their first year. What we want to see is sort of increased rigor over time, but met with academic success. And that success happens each year over time. We also go through this course recommendation process each year. So when your student is a 9th grader, the 9th grade teachers will be having conversations with them about their 10th grade recommendations, the 10th grade teachers about the 11th grade recommendations. So again, each year we don't track students here. So if they start out in all honors level classes, they're not relegated to all honors level classes for all 4 years. Students move up and down our level system depending on their academic success in those classes and what that balance looks like. The other reason why it's important to look at it sort of individually over years is that particularly in math and science, the subjects, even though they all fall under that umbrella, are very different. So biology, physics, and chemistry are all sciences, but they're very different sciences. Some require a very different skill set or mindset. The same thing with math. Geometry and algebra are both math, but they're very different maths. So your student may find greater success in one type of math or science than another, which is why, again, each year we go through this recommendation process and help your student make the best match of what can lead to their academic success. So during this time in March, again, you have the opportunity to make your requests. And then during that time, as you're looking at the recommendations of the teachers, you do have the capacity to make an override, or as Meredith said, maybe an underride, to kind of find that balance for your student. We really encourage families to take that consideration very seriously. Again, your teachers have made a recommendation that they feel is in your student's best interest. You know your student as well and all of the other things that they have on their plate for their freshman year. So we want you to be considerate of what that override may do. Also appreciate that the next time a student will have an opportunity to change their schedule after March 15th is not until school starts. And at that point, if they need to change a recommendation or they need to change a class, it may not be possible to do it at that point. So we honor requests at this point, but we can't necessarily guarantee. And that means if your student has overrode into a class and they have a struggle with that override, we may not be able to change that recommendation. So we really want students and families to take this process with sort of an earnestness and a thoughtfulness about what's going to be in their best interest. And again, if you have questions, to make sure that you reach out to their current year teacher who knows them best, or the school counselor, to kind of talk about that balance of what might be lead your student to success. If you're coming from a private school and you're with us this evening, if it is not already at your school, our counselors have provided the same information around the course selection process with many of the area private schools, so that you will be able to facilitate the course selection process through your private school. If you have, the other important thing to do is, if you know you want your student to attend Needham High School, you also need to register them through the central office registration process. So not only complete the paperwork at your private school for our course selection, but also make sure that you're registering them with our school. Once registered, again, if you have questions, you can direct your questions to Jean McDavitt. She's our assistant in the counseling department, and she can facilitate, where that question may be directed. But again, you're following the same process. We encourage you to have conversations with your students' current teachers. They know our curriculum pretty well, and they more importantly know your student and what they feel your student is capable of. In August, the first day of school is the 28th. Students will have their course schedules, usually probably about the Thursday before the first day of school. And that just helps them get ready for their first days. So between March 15th and the first day of school, at that point the scheduling process is closed, and we do our magic in building the master schedule. So again, your opportunity to sort of influence your students' courses is before March 15th. A couple of reminders. Again, we've talked a lot about the teacher recommendations, and they know your students well. And again, to talk to your current teachers and school counselors, again, you're welcome to call the high school. We can speak in generalities about our subject and our content, but we certainly don't know your students yet. So if you need general information, you're welcome to contact us. But again, if it's specific to your student, we encourage you to work with Pollard or your private schools so that they're really able to guide you based on how your student is doing currently. Again, only a small percentage of students really are successful here at the accelerated level their first year. And I really want to emphasize the fact that their sort of 8th course, because remember on that schedule they have 7 courses, I consider their 8th course the transition alone. Coming to high school, the level of freedom that we have, the level of choices that they have, being around older kids when they're used to being the top of the heap, it's a huge adjustment. And every student manages to do it over time and find their footing. But we want to sort of take into consideration that that's a really big transition for students. So that's kind of their 8th class. And we really want them, they've got that capacity over 4 years to increase that rigor. It does not all have to be accomplished in grade 9. Again, we talked to you about the override process, and through a link on this slide deck and also available at Pollard, you can get the override form if you choose to make some decisions to override or underride some of the recommendations. A couple other reminders, we'll go to the next slide, around just sort of helping support your students. First of all, Needham High School cannot honor teacher requests. We certainly know that many of you may know teachers that we have here, but with almost 1,700 students, it's impossible to honor teacher requests. We think you'll find a lot of success and a lot of interesting adults in this building who are going to work really well with your students, but we simply can't honor requests to have a particular teacher. We also can't honor teacher changes. The only time we change a teacher or make a teacher change is if a student has had that teacher before. So this does not extend to siblings. So if you have had older students and they've had experience with a teacher, we firmly believe that your subsequent students may have a completely different experience, and we really want to foster that relationship. So we ask that, again, we cannot honor teacher changes. Again, it also is because we have such a robust schedule and complicated schedule. That's something we also can't honor. We also sometimes get requests for students to be with their peers. And we appreciate that it's a big transition to high school, but again, that's not something within our schedule that we can honor. Students do have plenty of time to be with their friends before school, after school, during X block, lunches, and all of that stuff. We encourage you to remind your students that they've got those chances to see their peers. And students pretty quickly find their footing. They're all nervous. They're all new. They all don't know where they're going. They all will get lost. They all can ask questions, and they've got a lot of trusted adults that they will learn where to find their ways, and fortunately make new and different friends that they might not otherwise have had before. Many of the students love being here because they're no longer in that cluster model and with their friends and grouped and stuff like that, but that sometimes can lead them to being nervous about, but I don't know if I'm going to find friends. And I assure you that they find their footing very quickly, and we can all, as adults in the building, do our part to encourage them. If you happen to have a student who's very nervous and you have concerns or you want to talk things through, please feel free to reach out to the school counselors here. And again, we can put a bug in the teacher's ear saying that your student is nervous and just trying to find their footing, and the teachers can really kind of go behind the scenes and make sure that your student isn't feeling left out or is a part of a group or whatever. So, we whisper in a lot of teachers' ears at the beginning, but, we sort of do the subversive way of supporting our students. So reach out to the school counseling if you have particular concerns about your students, but again, we can all encourage our students to meet new and different people and, again, stay connected to their nearest and dearest friends during the social opportunities they have with lunch, X block, before school, and after school. Resources, again, to help you with the course selection process and as well as a transition. Again, your Pollard and private school staff, teachers and counselors really know your students well and can answer the vast majority of your questions. In fact, most of the departments and the school counselors, particularly at Pollard, have already met with all of our department heads to make sure that they understand all the nuances about the courses that we offer here so that they really are very informed about how to support the students in this transition. When you are here, again, we've got the high school department chairs, which we'll post in just a second, the list of the department chairs for you to reach out to. If you just have specific curriculum content-related questions that you'd like to ask them about. The school counselors, as Meredith says, your student will be assigned a school counselor, and that counselor will work with your students all 4 years that they're here. Again, there's also wonderful resources on the Pollard website and the Needham High School website that's available to you, including the program of studies, student handbooks, information about the schedule. So again, those are great resources for you to start dabbling into right now. Again, you'll have this slide deck to refer to for the department heads here at the high school. Some are K-12 directors, some are department heads specifically just at the high school. But it does give you an opportunity, again, if you have content-specific questions, to reach out to them if you need to over the next several months. And finally, our counselor breakdown. Again, this is this year's breakdown. It will be a little bit different next year. You can always be guaranteed if your name ends with A, that it will have Mr. Grannon. You can always be guaranteed that if your name ends in Z, it will be Ms. Masterpolo, and then it might be a little ish for next year. But again, as you'll see, our school counselors work with your students and families over the course of the 4 years that they're here, which means that we develop really close relationships not only with the students but the families. We see them in small group meetings and individual meetings each year. So over the course of that 4 years, we're helping them navigate their academics, their social, emotional, and their post-secondary planning. Sometimes students, in addition to their school counselor, may need a little additional support, particularly with the social emotional, and that's where they may also have a personal counselor, and that's somebody who can meet with them individually in a little bit more of a therapeutic environment. So again, some students may not need a personal counselor, but they will always have a school counselor. We know that high school is fraught with lots of ups and downs. I think we can all reflect back on our 4 years of high school, and thank goodness we're not doing it again. We know it's not a smooth path, and I think if we can stay steady as they go up and down over the course of that time, and again, the school counselors and the personal counselors are here to help smooth that path as well. And they're also here as a resource for you. If you have questions or concerns about your students at any point over the course of the time that they're with us, please feel free to reach out to them. Also, we have some special programs. We have some clinical support in our special education programs. We have a transition program, which is for students who have or are absent from school greater than 5 days, whether or not they've been hospitalized or on medical leave. We help transition them slowly back into school so that they're not overwhelmed with 6 days of missing work. Each grade has an assistant principal, so our assistant principals break up the 9th grade into sort of 3 sections, and then one principal will follow that clutch of the class for the following 3 years. And again, like the school counselors, the APs do a phenomenal job of getting to know your student. They're in the hallways all the time, they're at lunch, they're reaching out, they're a tremendous resource in supporting your students. Activities, I'm going to turn it back over to Ellen.
Thank you, Dana. Okay, we're almost done. And all of what we just shared with you is obviously incredibly important. It's your students' academic path through high school and how they'll be supported as well. We also know that all of this is extremely important, so you'll see a lot of links here around our extracurricular programs, so everything that's in addition to what happens between 8 and 2:35 every day for your students. There are, I think, over 100 different clubs that Needham High School sponsors. I just spoke with Pierre Jean, who's one of our other assistant principals, yesterday, as he came back into the office at like 4 o'clock and was saying how inspired he was by the passion that students have for the clubs they want to start. So he helps to oversee clubs and activities for students and listens to and hears with a few other students ideas that students have for clubs that don't already exist in the 100 that we already currently offer. He's seeing students like bi-weekly, I think, around their new ideas and their passions. So we of course want to support all of that. And we have, almost all of our teachers are involved in some way in supporting as advisors for different clubs and activities that are happening. We also have a huge, I think the biggest, or one of at least biggest, interscholastic athletic program in the state, and obviously a very successful one if you follow that and if your students are interested. So Ryan Madden and Rich Carter-Barrier are our 2 athletic directors and are new to us as of this year. And you can certainly reach out to them at any point. You may already have experience with the athletic program here. But you can see all the different offerings that are, both the clubs and activities and athletics here. We do have, as a part of starting the transition to Needham High School, it starts tonight. It will continue throughout the spring in your course selection process with your students. And we'll also have some opportunities for students to come into Needham High School at the end of this year. We usually do this in June. We haven't established an exact date yet, but we'll invite students in to come into Needham High School, do some tours, get acquainted with some of our staff and programs, and just see the building. So that's the start of our transition and orientation process. And then we also host an athletics and activities fair where you'll be able to interact with some of the staff involved and student leaders involved in some of the athletics and activities program. And that's a night that you'll be able to come with your students as well. So that's a community event. Athletics wants you to know that registration starts in June, this is for next year, and continues over the summer, and that fall sports at the high school, 9th grade, JV, and varsity level do start before school starts, and at least football starts the week of August 18th. So if your students are interested in playing 9th grade JV or varsity football, it does start before school begins on the 28th. And at the high school level, all sports run through all school vacations. Commitments get different as the levels go up, but 9th grade might not be over all school vacations. This is one to take a picture of. The PTC is recruiting beginning tonight. You're not even here yet, but recruiting your services and interest. If you have any interest in any of these positions and being a part of our amazing PTC, we partner all of the time. They support us in every way that they possibly can. They always make things happen for us and our students. So, we appreciate all the support there. And anything that you've already done or maybe interested in doing, there's some contact information for you here. Okay, we made it. That was a little over an hour, but we're here, and Meredith, Dana, and I are here to stay. If you want to take off and leave and go have dinner, you're welcome to do that, and reach out to us at another time. If you want to stick around and ask some questions, we'll be here for you as well. So let's just give a minute to let you know.
so that those who are staying to listen to questions can hear us. Thank you.
Okay, the question was, what is the difference between the role of the personal counselor and the school counselor? I'm gonna let Dana answer.
So every student will have a school counselor, and that school counselor will help to usher them all 4 years. And that school counselor will not only help them with academic planning, but help them with social emotional ups and downs, and also post-secondary planning. We do have some students whose social emotional well-being at times becomes even more overwhelming, and they might need somebody to touch base with them more regularly. So maybe once a week, once a cycle, and to have that additional layer of support. And that support can last one session, it could last 6 months, it could last a year. It really depends on what the student needs. So sometimes also students may have outside support, outside individual therapists, and they might want to have a person inside just to kind of create the continuity of care. So that would also be another reason maybe to have a personal counselor. But it doesn't mean that every student needs to access that personal counselor. It also may mean that your student accesses a personal counselor for maybe a few months of freshman or grade 9 year, and may not need to for the rest of their trajectory. It might be somebody who touches base with them all 4 years. So it's a very individualized need based on that additional support the student needs, again, in addition to having that school counselor. But that school counselor is also, we're very fortunate to have an incredibly skilled group of school counselors, many of whom hold clinical degrees as well. So they do handle a lot of the social emotional well-being. Personal counselors are sort of in addition to that for those students who need that more regular check-in in order for that social emotional support. Yeah, so the question is, how do you strike that balance in terms of the level of rigor in academic success, and whether or not we want to be in a lower level and get an A versus a higher level and get in B. I think the most important thing is kind of what does that balance look like, and where is your child going to be the most successful? And success doesn't necessarily mean an A all the time. One of the fortunate things that Needham did a handful of years ago is unlevel classes, which is hopefully one way of having students really focusing on what level is appropriate for them. I think it's important from a post-secondary lens to appreciate that what we want to see is students who are challenging themselves. If we see a student with a transcript in all honors level classes getting straight A's, then that might, emphasize might be an indication that they really weren't pushing themselves in some of their classes. We also don't want to see a student in all accelerated level classes with C's on their transcript, because again, that might be that they might have needed in some classes to moderate themselves a bit more. I also want to emphasize that sometimes there are also situations where students being in all honors level classes and maybe getting A's makes sense. So I think of students who have a lot of commitments outside of school that are really pulling in multiple directions. We also have students who, for instance, have learning disabilities, and that sweet spot is honors, where with the level of support that they need in their learning style, that actually suits them really well. And that's why it's really important to look at this as an individual decision and an individual process for each of the students. So if you have students who've been here who are already in our system, and this is your first of many, it really is important to look at each of your students individually and what's going to lead to their academic success. And what does that look like? Because that might be a student who is able to handle more accelerated and advanced levels. It might be that the mix is a much better place. So it's really important that each year we're having these conversations with students to determine what leads to that academic success. And I want to caution that academic success does not necessarily mean straight A's. We want students challenging themselves appropriately, but not overextending, because then that has its own sort of ripple effects in other areas. So it's a vague answer, and it will stay vague, and it gets vaguer as you get through 4 years, and even vaguer when you get to the post-secondary process, because a lot of it is, it depends on your student. But I think that's where, as you're working your student over the course of 4 years, to talk to the school counselor who's got to know them, have conversations with their teachers, how they're doing, what they're struggling with. You know, I think the other important thing to recognize, like each year in education, we're always looking to push your students developmentally. So when they come home and say, Mom, I have no idea how to do this, I hope they don't know how to do this, otherwise you should be teaching the class. We're going to be pushing them for their skill level and their abilities, and if they've never written a haiku before, we're going to teach them how to write that. That's why we're here. So if they're sitting and saying, I have no idea how to do this, tell them to ask questions. They shouldn't know the answers. They should know how to find the answers or how to think for themselves, but we often will put students in a situation where we know they don't know the answer and we want them to think. We have a lot of students come and say, just tell me what's on the test. We're not going to tell them what's on the test all the time. We want them to think, we want them to grow, we want them to analyze and stuff like that, and we want them to struggle appropriately and developmentally along the way.
So is there no weighted GPA?
There is no weighted GPA. So important to understand what that means at the post-secondary level. That doesn't mean that they now no longer need to take advanced level classes or take into consideration how they're doing. Colleges will see the level of rigor that a student takes on their transcripts. So it's not only the classes they've taken, the grades that they've taken, but the levels that they have taken those classes on. So whether a school is reporting a weighted or unweighted GPA, at the post-secondary level, the colleges can tell what that level of rigor is. The other reason why they know what that rigor is because every student who applies to college has accompanying their transcript a school profile. And the school profile helps each college understand what our courses are, what our levels are, and what our level of rigor is. So for instance, if we are a school that only offers one AP course, and your student has taken that AP course and maybe all accelerated, then that college knows that your student has taken the most rigorous course load we have here, and they judge your student accordingly. If we're a school that offers 50 AP courses and your student has taken none, then that indicates to the college that your student hasn't taken the most rigorous course load. So really, again, what we want your students to do by unweighting the GPAs, we want them to focus on what level is appropriate each year in terms of that level of rigor so they can meet it with academic success, and their transcript reflects that when they are doing the post-secondary application process. Get up here. So on the slide deck that you will be able to see, and we'll have it posted on the Pollard website, the high school website. I think it'll be sent out magically. There's a lot of links to the 9IP program that goes into a deeper dive than we presented this evening. And I encourage you also that most of this slide deck has a lot of live links. We did not go into a lot of the fine and performing arts, just in interest of time, but all of that information is on there as well. If you have specific questions, again, there are the 2 coffees that Tamitha is doing for Pollard. I believe it's Friday morning and Monday or Tuesday evening. The content is the same for both coffees, so she runs both of them. So depending on your time and your availability, you can attend one or both, but the content will be the same. And if you have specific questions, also Ginny Odinera, who is the teacher here who kind of oversees the program, will be happy to answer your questions. So again, I think also your school counselor down at Pollard, if your student's at Pollard, also knows your student well, also understands 9IP, and can kind of talk about the nuances related to your student in particular. Any other questions? So, yeah. So the question is, depending on the levels that you choose this year for your student to enter 9th grade, does that then track them into that level for their high school experience? Correct. Yep. We can close.
Thank you. Yes. So this isn't one size fits all, and the beauty is it would meet your child with perhaps English was something that they, like you said, they needed more support, right? And so especially at the beginning of high school, I find that if there are certain skills that a student needs, grades 9 and 10 are really important to work on those skills. There are still pathways to move up. And also, but caution, moving up isn't always the answer, and all of these courses prepare students for college admissions. Okay? I should have stressed that with college prep, thus the name. So, yes, it has an impact, but it also can have an impact on your child's success because they're developing the skills that they need in the content level and the confidence to then do the best they can. And those skills, the English skills, would then correlate to their world history class and everything else. Their writing skills, their analytical skills.
He doesn't know. I don't know. He has me in this
And I appreciate that. And it's wonderful you're part of our community. And the key is leaning on the resources. Is your child at Pollard? Yes, I would lean on the current teachers now that your child has, as well as the school counselor. And if you need more specific info about where they land here, a counselor here can also talk to you.
So the teacher will give a suggestion, right? This will go out. I don't take any action, and whatever the teacher said is going to be what is going to do next week.
Yep.
So this is what I'm doing. So I need to visit our school and decide if I want to go out.
The whole idea is that you are going to talk about it with your child and kind of forward thinking and thinking about the future, and even though it's 6 months from now, thinking about high school and what these courses mean, and does your child feel comfortable with this, and what does it look like, what does extracurricular time look like next year as a 9th grader. And then if you have any other questions, I mean, it's not like you have to just acquiesce and take it, but it's just good to look at it with your child and think about next steps. And if there are any questions, that's the time to address them. Okay? Yeah.
I think also just to reiterate in terms of college admissions, again, we do this course selection process each year. So your student is right this year having their conversation with their 8th grade cluster and hopefully their school counselor if needed. When your student is a 9th grader, this time next year, your student will be having individual conversations with each of their teachers again, making recommendations for grade 10. And the same thing will happen in grade 11 and grade 12. So each year your student is having these conversations with their teachers, and you're having an opportunity to have conversations with your student based on the other things that they have going on and making those decisions. And over the course of that 4 years, you're thoughtful about where can they challenge themselves, where do they need additional support, and they're making those adjustments. And then that sort of total 4-year picture is then what sets them up for the post-secondary process. And the school counselors here will work with your student all 4 years to kind of help them navigate what does that look like and what's an appropriate sort of balance for them. And again, anytime you have a question about kind of the overall process, reach out to the school counselor. If it's specific to a subject area that you have questions about, we encourage you to target that with that subject area teacher. So if it's English, talk to their English teacher. We as school counselors don't necessarily know all the nuances of how your student is doing in that subject, what their strengths and weaknesses are in that subject area. We're kind of the big picture people.
What was your line of unknown industry? You mentioned college applications a couple of times.
this a lot from me and the school counselors here. I'm going to really encourage you to help your student invest and focus on their high school experience. They only get to do this once. And I don't want them to reach graduation day saying shoulda, coulda, woulda. And I don't want them making their decisions thinking that any single decision that they make is going to make or break their college application process, because it simply isn't that clear cut. And as I said before, you're going to hear a lot, particularly in the post-secondary process, is it depends. It depends on what they're interested in, it depends on what they're applying for, it depends on where they want to be, and it also depends on the admissions landscape at that time. The admissions landscape is like winning the lottery right now. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. It is exceptionally unpredictable. And what I encourage students and families to focus on is what I call the controllables, what you have control over. And what you have control over and what your student has control over is their time at Needham High School and how they spend their time and how they invest their time over the course of their 4 years. And even Kevin Kelly, who's the former director of admissions, Meredith remembers him for UMass, he says it's incumbent upon us to take back their high school experience and have them experience high school, because they can't make any one single decision that is going to guarantee them admission into their ideal school. And what their ideal school is spring of junior year and their ideal school of spring of senior year may be totally different as well, as they find those twists and turns over the course of the next 4 years here. So it's really important for them to focus on challenging themselves appropriately and investing their time and energy into the things that matter to them, not what they think is going to matter on a college application, because we simply have no control over that. What we hope to do in the post-secondary process is to help them make decisions to set them up to find those institutions that meet their needs. The colleges are looking for who meets their own needs. We don't necessarily know those agendas, but it's what do those schools meet their needs? Does it have what they want? So they may say, well, geez, I've heard Bowdoin's a really wonderful place, but if you don't want to be in the backwoods of Maine and you'd rather be in a city, then Bowdoin, as wonderful as it is not a good choice for them. Okay? So it really is at that point, as we work through this, finding the right fit, what meets their needs and what meets the college's needs, and hopefully those two connect, and there's some wonderful opportunities for them. And every student who walks out this door has a post-secondary plan in place, and it may look different for each of you, and it's a very individualized process. What I do encourage you to do is to help them capitalize on their time here and focus their time in as well as they can enjoy their high school experience, because we just can't predict what's going to happen in 4 years, but we can determine this. I'll tell you one other story. It's a really unique experience. It happens nowhere else in the world. And the Greater Boston Project, which is an opportunity for our 12th graders here, 12th grade only. That course exists nowhere else in the world. And some of you, well, none of you know, I was actually a school counselor here for 10 years before I took a hiatus and went to the evil empire next door for 6 years, and now I'm back. Always a rocket. I have a wonderful, wonderful student, probably 2 years before I left here. His older siblings went to Harvard. He wanted to go to Harvard. And he came to me junior year and said, Ms. Plunkett, I have no idea what to do. He says, I know I need to take a rigorous course load next year, but I really want to take GBP, Greater Boston Project. And I said to him, I fully, support whatever decision you make. I said, but what I want to remind you is that I said, you can take AP Spanish in college, you can take econ in college, you can't take Greater Boston in college, you can only take it here. I said, so I want you to make a decision that when you finish up your senior year, you don't look back and regret. So he decided to take Greater Boston Project. I think he took 3 APs. So he didn't take AP Spanish, he didn't take AP Econ. When he went on his college interviews, particularly at Harvard, take one guess as to what they spent 3/4 of that interview talking about. The Greater Boston Project. And where did he go to college? Harvard University. So he followed his path, he followed what he wanted to do, what he felt was in his best interest, and he took advantage of an opportunity he had no other place in the world, and he still was able to follow a path that he wanted to do. Now again, that's not a guarantee for all of us to get into Harvard. Its admit rate is below 4%, if not lower by now. But again, it's more a story to tell that he chose what he wanted to do, not what he thought he should do, and he was still able to find his path. And that's what we want for all of your students here. So I know that's a long-winded answer. The short version is roughly spring or winter and spring of junior year is when we start in earnest in terms of the school counselors will give some general information to families and to juniors, and then we start doing individual meetings with them to help them guide them through their individual process. Some students get on the bandwagon earlier, some students are a little bit slower to that race. Some you gotta drag a little bit longer, that's okay. Again, every student will graduate here with a plan that works for them. And we're here to help them navigate that at their own timetable and usher them along. So there's sort of touch points of things that they need to make. A deadline in college admissions is a deadline. 2 hours late, 2 days late, it's not going to be accepted. That's sometimes the hardest deadline students are finally ever reaching. But we really start focusing in junior year because we want them freshman, sophomore, and into junior year to really just be focusing on what they have control over, which is their high school experience.